my friends. We're gonna pick up where we left off last class. We were talking about the election process. So we're gonna regroup just a little bit and make sure we've got what's going on in all the different parts. All right. So if you remember last class, we talked through the history a little bit, and what was the convention that was the major turning point in this process? What? Yeah, 1968. 1968 was a real big problem, right? And remember that the disconnect was that at the Democratic National Convention, the delegates at the convention back then were kind of like party elites. They were not regular people that were allowed to go to the convention. And as a result, they ended up choosing what the party wanted rather than what the people wanted. The voting rights started looking different in 1968, and our country was really different. And so the Democrats lost miserably, and they realized, in conjunction with all these reforms we've been making with voting rights, we also need to reform then how our party functions. So what was the name of the thing that was created to reform our process? Yep, the MFC, the McGovern-Fraser Commission. And what the McGovern-Fraser Commission did, basically, you don't need to know like all the details. What you need to know is that they called for state parties and state legislatures to make this process more open, to make it more representative, to make it more transparent, so that when the party delegates are making decisions at the county convention, at the state convention, and then at the national convention, they're representing their people, and they're doing what the people in the states wanted. So mostly we spent time then focusing on, okay, well, what does the primary or the nomination season look like? So the primary or nomination season, if you think about like on a timeline, that's happening from January or February all the way up to the end of the summer. And during that process, during that time period, we are having an intra-party competition. Okay? So I showed you guys a ballot, remember? And it had, here are all the Republicans who want to be president. Here are all the Republicans who want to be senator. Here are all the Republicans that want to serve in judge position 1422. Like, it's any time that there's more than one person, and then you, as a registered Republican or as a registered Democrat or as a declared Republican or a declared Democrat, get to help the party decide. Okay? What is the goal of this phase? What is it that you're trying to get? Okay, so you want to be a presidential candidate, so that's what the party is trying to decide. So if I'm a person that's running for president, what do I want? So I want voter approval, all right? And when we go, so you and I go as voters, and we vote, we're choosing who's going to be represented at the next level. What do we call the people who are going to the county convention and going to the state convention and going to the national convention? Delegates, good. So the goal for presidential candidates during the primary and nomination season is delegates. And you don't need to know numbers, you guys, because they're fluid. But it just depends on how many people they're going to send to the convention. But once a candidate gets a certain number of delegates, they're pretty much promised that they're going to get the party's nomination. We still have to do it. We still have to have the national convention. It's just kind of like a formality at that point, though. Okay, because typically the delegates are going to represent the people's views, right? So last class we had a primary. Fatima, what is a primary? Like in one word.
It's an election.
Good. It's an election. The primary is an election. You show up on primary day. Usually the polls are open from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. You cast a ballot, you walk out. It's very simple, right? Those votes are tabulated, and then the party will use that to figure out how the delegates will be allocated. We also can have a caucus. A caucus is different. A caucus is a meeting. It is not closed to party elites anymore. Caucuses are registered voters. You just all show up at the same time. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually have a caucus, all right? So here's what we're going to do. So I wrote the name because I know it's been a couple days. I wrote on the board, back there on the whiteboard, I wrote the name of the 8 candidates that you guys had options to choose from, okay? So it's all hanging over Daniel's head. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is I'm going to ask you to decide. Pretend like we just showed up, all right? Everybody came into the room, and I'm going to be the election judge in this room. And I'm going to tell you to decide which of those candidates you most prefer. And you're going to go to that corner of the room, okay? Now, some of you, everybody chose, but some of you may not have been super committed, and some of you might go, like, I really don't like any of these people, so I want to be convinced. So if you're an undecided voter, you're welcome to stay in your seat as well. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to give you guys basically 10 minutes to caucus. And caucus means you're going to walk around, you're going to talk, and you're going to try to convince people to vote on your side. We are going to have a threshold of, we're going to say you have to have 20% of the room in order to get any delegates. So if your candidate ends up not having 20% when I call time, you may choose to realign and go and vote with a different candidate instead, okay? I know in the video they said you could leave. I'm not letting you leave, okay? So that's what we're going to do, and then we'll do a vote, and we're going to just kind of see what happens, all right? This is a community meeting. So in a community meeting, you're talking about the candidates, but you also can say, hey, you know what, it went out the kids' soccer game, or how was the football game last night, or whatever it is you talk about at a community meeting, right? Because these are your neighbors and your friends. So you're walking together, you're talking, and you're trying to decide what's going to be best for your community, okay? All right, so let's just do it like this then.